Hello and welcome in, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Feel free to get your guys' questions into the Q&A and we will answer them in the order that they are received. I'm going to go ahead and give it like one more minute to let people trickle in and join in and get their questions in. But again, you're going to want to go to that Q&A and enter in any questions that you guys might have. I do have a couple that were emailed into me. So if I don't see any questions in the next like 30 seconds, I'll probably pull those up and I will share how to do what we need to do for those. Okay, let's go ahead and hop right in. I don't see any questions yet, but again, get them into the Q&A and that's where I'll answer them. But one of the first questions that I was emailed was when we create clients or when we have clients in open and close, we have to add them several times. For example, we have to add them to the deal sync, to the widget, to assign them to follow up boss. Is there a way to enter their information just once? Currently, there is not. So when we talk about utilizing that follow-up boss integration, and we talk about, we've gone here and we've connected our API, okay? If you haven't connected your API, it looks a little something like this. We'll click on Connect API. We'll select the API that we want to connect, and then we'll say Close. But the reason that the contact sync, the deal sync, the widget sync, these are all individual integrations that we're going to connect with. I'm going to go to contact sync. I'm going to search for that particular buyer or seller, and I'm going to add them here. Same thing with the deal sync. I'm going to make sure that the party members who need access to it, whether that's whether that is the like the deal users or it's again the contacts, and same with the widget, searching and selecting them here. This will have to be done every single time. Why is that? Why can't we just have it selected on contact sync and then feed through the deal sync and the widget as well? The main reason that it doesn't work like that is really down to the fact that you might not use deal sync, you might not use widget, right? When we talk about using these integrations, it's up to you guys on what you want to utilize versus what you don't want to utilize. I've seen teams who do not do the contact sync at all, and they only share the widget. And when they share the widget, they're sharing very limited information for that widget. They only want to share the timeline and the documents. That's it. I've had people where they only do the deal sync. They don't do anything with the contact sync or the widget. They're just syncing with the deal. That way, when they update their status from contract under contract to closed, they can update it within follow-up boss as well. And they can click on that green check mark and boom, now that deal has been updated within follow-up boss as well. So the reason that we would manually or have to make sure that we're selecting the correct person every single time is mainly due to that. Now, when it comes to contacts, like if we're filling out an intake form, okay, and we're trying to select our contacts or bring our contacts onto a property, it's kind of a little different. It depends on how you're filling out that intake form. If I'm a user who's logged in, a team member who's logged in, and I have access to the contacts, then when I go to fill out this new listing intake form and I go to grab the typical listing party members that we work with, the photographer that we work with, the stager that we work with, maybe even the cleaning service that we work with, or the pre-inspection people that we work with, or any other party members that we work with, typically for that listing, I already have all those contact members in my database. I'm logged in as a user, so I'm going to have access to them and be able to bring them on. If I am using this intake form instead as a public intake form, okay, a public intake form, this is severed from my connection. Technically, I could grab this URL and share it with you guys, and you could fill this out as many times as you wanted to and submit it to my system, right? With the public intake form, the reason that we don't have that access to the database is because literally anyone can fill it out. Anyone. from the States to offshore to anyone in the world who has access to the internet and has that link. So we're not going to make it that the contacts are available. And sometimes that means that we're going to have duplicates, right? That photographer that I always work with, well, when they filled out the public intake form and it's the same photographer, because I was asking for that photographer contact, I made it required. When they filled out the information, I ended up having two or three versions. I'm going to go ahead and clear all and say this. I had two or three versions of Sheldon because he's our photographer. And when people were trying to tell me that Sheldon was going to be doing photos for like 4 different properties, I ended up having him entered in multiple times. Same thing with John Doe. If I had to enter him in multiple times, maybe that's not his email address on all of his contacts. And that could also be another reason why I have multiple versions of him. When it comes to your contact database and it comes to having multiple versions of people, you can see that it's pretty normal in the sense that I have quite a number of people that are multiples in here. But the reason that it's relatively normal is because open to close is not a CRM, right? We are not a customer relationship management system. We're a transaction management system, which means that while having true contact information is important, it's usually not where we're getting the information from. Typically, people are using an integration like Dotloop to import their contacts, or Follow Boss to import their contacts, or Skyslope to import their contacts, right? Or they're brand new party members that they've never worked with before, like buyers and sellers that we're gathering for that information, or maybe new lenders or title officers that we're gathering that information from the agent. So duplicates typically happen when we have people either filling out a public intake form, or here's the other caveat. Let's say you're an agent portal user and you're logged into your account. I'm going to go over to my organization and users. I'm going to go to my agents. I'm going to impersonate Justin. If Justin doesn't have access to my clients, right? He doesn't have access to my contacts database. Every time Justin fills out the intake form, he's going to be selecting from his own database the contacts that he's slowly but surely built up here. Okay. These are contacts that belong to him that are going to show up here. But they're not just going to show up here, they're also going to show up underneath my contacts. So when we talk about, oh, well, Hannah, I'm going to go through and I'm going to merge all my contacts, there's nothing wrong with that. But what happens if I'm merging these 4 Sheldons together, but this top Sheldon at the top, that one belongs to Justin? And so when I merge him into the other Sheldon that I own, that Sheldon that belonged to Justin no longer shows up in his account because we merged it. So keep that in mind too, is that technically we could have duplicates because this is the Sheldon in Justin's account, this is the Sheldon in my account, this is the Sheldon in another coworker's account, or this is the Sheldon in another agent's account, right? And so we have multiple versions of that because that's the one that they're using. And we can see who owns those contacts by selecting the user, or I'm sorry, selecting the contact. Let me see if I can give you an example. Let's see who this was created by. So this is created by community team member. That's one Hannah. Let's go down to another Hannah. This was created by community team member. Let's see this one. Team member still. Maybe. Nope, still the team member. Nope, still team member. Oh, I was hoping I could find one, maybe a test one. Mm-mm. A lot of people log into this particular user, so it makes sense that we're seeing a majority of them as community team member, as the person who's creating it. And if you're curious about where I'm looking down here in this corner where it says created by. This is who's gonna tell you who owns that particular contact. So just keep that in mind when it comes to your contacts. There's nothing wrong with having, a monthly audit of going through and merging the people together. There's nothing wrong with going through and figuring out, okay, if it's this agent, they work with these party members every single time, and I really don't want them to have to fill out duplicates anymore. So I'm going to change my process. I'm going to set it up now that when I go onto a property, if I'm working with that particular agent, I'm going to use a contact group. And I'm going to say, okay, I want to bring on Hannah's team because these are the 4 party members that Hannah always works with, right? So we can use our contact groups to make it easier for us to assign people en masse if there's a group of people that we need to assign to a property. Same thing with like inspectors, right? We could say, okay, I want this list of inspectors to come onto the property if it's Jill's transaction, or this list of inspectors if it's Hannah's transaction. Contacts are a hard one. I think that there's so many ways that we can handle it. If you guys have specific questions about that, please let me know. Please feel free to drop that into the Q&A and we can address those. You can say, this is how I handle it. Is there a better way to do it? Is there a faster way to do it if you're running into a long time with it? Looks like we got our first question. Hi, I'm working on a new intake form and task list. I have the intake form for the buyer executed contracts and seller executed contracts, and I need to create one where we are in an intermediary transaction where we are the only agent between the buyer and seller. With that said, I know I can clone an intake form template, but is there a way to clone two intake form templates into a single new intake form template? That way it captures the triggers and conditions on the intake form? Or would you suggest doing a new intake form that is only for intermediary transactions? I'm assuming when you say intermediary, you're referring to dual? Let me just make sure I understand what that word means. Yeah, I'm imagining you mean that as a dual transaction. Hopefully, I'm gathering that correctly. Now, when it comes to dual transactions, yes, Texas doesn't have it, but okay, cool. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, cool. So Texas doesn't have dual agency, but yes, it's similar to it. Perfect. Okay, cool. So when it comes to dual, it's really a toss-up, okay? I have seen people have it where they have one property that they work out of. They have both buy side and sell side on it. They've got a task template that's specifically built out for dual for all of those kinds of intricacies that could come with it. And then I've seen other people have it where they have the linked property with it. Okay, and where they have one that this is the under contract version for the, let's say for the buyer, and this one here is the under contract version for the seller. I know that says not accepted. We're going to go ahead and ignore that for now. I'm going to go ahead and change that to, oop, I'm going to change this to seller. It just depends on the kinds of communication that you're sending out and how you're addressing those party members, right? That will depend on whether or not you want to have two separate transactions or if you want to work it out of one. Usually, what I see happen, this is typically the flow that I see. I see someone have a listing. This is the listing property that they have. I'm going to go ahead and enter in a new address for us, and we're going to go through this together. Let's do Steeplechase. We'll go ahead and say it's a seller. We'll say it's a listing. And I'm going to go ahead and kind of make it easier for us. We're going to say no to everything just so that we don't have to worry about, filling out any extra information. NA. Go ahead and say it's going to go live on the 24th. Listing agreement was today and the listing price was 3,500. There we go. Escrow officer, I'm going to go ahead and again select the contact because I'm logged in. We'll go ahead and say that that is Bernice. And we'll go ahead and say continue. I'm not going to add on anything else. And now we have this listing property, okay? So you have the listing, people come, people look at the house, they go, wow, that's a great house. I love this house. I want this house. And then they go, I'm going to go ahead and just approve this intake form. I don't have a buyer's agent. Can you just represent me? Because I love this house so much and I don't want to have to look for anyone else. Right. And so we go, yeah, absolutely. 100%. So we go, okay, I'm going to fill out a secondary intake form from this, right? So that we can get that under contract version of the property. And we'll say, okay, cool. Well, they decided that we were going to go under contract on the first. Now this is the under contract version. They put in above asking price, which was fantastic for our sellers. Where prospect closing date is going to be November 5th. Our execution date, again, I'm going to go ahead and say that it is we'll go ahead and say it's on the 2nd because sometimes those are two different dates. We'll pop in our earnest money amount. We'll go ahead and say it's 35. We'll say yes, there's an inspection. So I'll go ahead and grab a couple of these and say 21. We'll say no, there's no home protection plan. There was no referral, right? This is like a walk-in that came in, said they wanted it. Yeah, there's a loan. Yeah, there's an appraisal. So I can enter in a couple more information. We'll go ahead and say it's this. We'll say 25 and we'll say 14. Just want to make sure there's no other fields. I definitely need to reorder this intake form because it's populating above. But they go ahead and they go say, yes, we're going to do this. Okay, so we're moving forward with it. I'm going to go ahead and grab a random file and upload it and then say continue. Okay, okay, let's go ahead and add on our seller, which is going to be Justin. Go ahead and grab that one. Buyer's agent, we'll go ahead and say it's Hannah. And seller's agent, we're going to go ahead and say it's Jill. And we're going to go ahead and say continue. And we'll submit. So now we have that listing. Now we have the under contract, right? That secondary intake form that was created from it. We're kind of moving fast through this because I'm just showing you, okay, the time is moving really quick for us right now in this example. I'm going to go ahead and pop in an MLS number. I'm going to pop in the year bill, 2025, brand new house and earnest money. And then I'm going to approve this intake form. Right? I want things to duplicate. The documents are, oh, well, actually, let me go ahead and file my documents correctly. Let's go ahead and say it's oh, looks like my template didn't come on right away. I'm going to go ahead and add on my template. Purchase contract and disclosures. Here it is. I'm going to go ahead and say this is my purchase agreement. File that away. And then we'll go ahead and say approve. And this duplicates the transaction. So you have that listing still. Now you have your under contract. I will see people fill out another intake form. Okay, another secondary intake form off of this intake form because they've already answered a majority of the questions for what's going to happen for this, the things that they need to know for it, the things that are happening on it because they have both contracts. So once this property is created, they might fill out another secondary intake form. And that other secondary intake form, it might clone over a majority, if not all of the same information onto this under contract version of the property. But instead, it is gathering that buyer's information. And so then you have a chain linked property where this is the listing. And I'm going to go ahead and pop it into the name. And then linked to it, we have the seller under contract, or we can call it seller side if we want to. And then again, linked to this, we would fill out another intake form to then have our buyers under contract, and they have them linked together. Sometimes people want to have their properties separate like that. Sometimes you want to have it in one. If you have it in one, then we're going to want to determine, okay, well, how did we know it was dual? Because right now I'm not asking for that contract client type. So we might want to add that to that secondary intake form so that we can have that say, okay, it's dual. I want my dual task templates to come onto this particular property. Yeah, 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 Craig, you're like, wait a second, there's a lot that you just did with that intake form that I didn't realize that you could do. Yeah, there's quite a bit for it. But this is what I would probably recommend is possibly having two separate transactions, right? We're still gonna want to always have that listing just in case that buyer does end up falling through. They pull out and they say they don't want to do that. Actually, I'm just kidding. I don't want this house. Maybe something happens and they're not able to make good on the deal that they initially started. And so you have this seller side that you can cancel. And then if you have that linked buyer side or you have that buyer side underneath here, you can cancel that as well, right? Or if you want to have it worked out of the same intake form, that's completely fine too. Now it's really just down to the questions that you're asking. What's the difference between when you have it, you're representing just the seller versus just the buyer, or when you're representing both? Looking at this intake form and kind of deciding what are the other pieces of information that I need to gather, right? Who's filling this out? That's the other big question that I've really been asking you guys recently. I hear a lot of people say stuff like, my agents don't want to fill out the intake form, right? Well, let's think about that. They just went through and they wrote that offer. And then they worked with those buyers or those sellers to purchase the deal, right? To sign it, to agree to selling their homes or purchasing a new home. And now they have to go into intake form and they have to answer all the same questions that they just worked through, right? That's kind of that's kind of like a Debbie Downer in a way. It's kind of like, great, I did all this work, used all of this, but now I have to go fill it out again. And so when I talk about the intake form that we're asking, when we're talking about gathering that information from our agents, I really do recommend taking a look at what questions we're asking and making sure it's stuff that we need to ask them, right? Or is it stuff that we internally can answer? For example, I have this intake form in here. It's called a baby intake form. It's really nothing crazy. It asks for the address, contract client type, status, and it asks a couple questions, but watch me answer these oh, well, I don't think this baby intake form is built out the way I want it to be. Let me answer all these questions and see. The only thing that came up was HOA, and this needs to be reordered. So let me just reorder it really quickly so that it's in the right order. I think I added in a new field recently, and so yeah, I can see it here. And so it kind of reordered all my questions, which is normal. When you add in a new field section, you might see some questions get pushed into different orders and such like that. So it's a pretty normal thing. But let me bring up my contract questions because I want them almost all the way to the top. Property details, contract questions. Let me go back over to that baby intake form. This is the secondary intake form. I'm trying to look for the colors on the sides. Let me just refresh this. So my baby intake form, we ask for the address. They put in the address. Here they put in the contract client type. They say it's like the buyer, or this, they say it's a buyer, say it's under contract, and they answer a couple of these questions. And they're just really telling you, yes, what's happening on it. And then the only thing I ask for, I don't require it of my agents is, well, you said there was an HOA. Do you have that information? Like if you know it, put it in there. If not, they can skip and they can move forward, right? So this is one thing that I'd probably recommend you guys take a look at, because when I say, yes, there will be an inspection, internally, I can have it say, okay, well, they indicated that there's an inspection. And so internally, just like how you saw some of those buttons, I know I moved really fast, but internally I can have fields come up here and say that they're required. Okay, well, they need to add in the seller concession amount. So I want my TC to go and pull up that listing agreement, buyer's agreement, find that seller concession amount, and then update that property field and say, yeah, the seller concessions are $8,000. Update. And now that's over here. I'm going to go to transaction details. Now seller concessions has been added in there, right? We can make things internally required of our team members, right? We can also technically take some of these questions and make them internally required here. I don't know if I have an example of that. Let me see if I have one on my other properties. Not really, not on that one. Let me see this one. Do you have anything like that? Here, financing type. Okay, so this is an example of that. So internally, I have a question that's a drop down that they're going to select, right? And let's say when I say that it's VA, I have conditions set up that if I say the financing type is VA, then I want specific information about inspections to come on, specifically pest inspections. I need to schedule that. So I've got a task template that comes on, fields that come on that requests that the inspection needs to get scheduled. When I update this and say the financing is VA, it's going to update that financing details here, but we're not going to see that pest inspection information populate until after I approve that intake form. Then it's going to show up in my fields, right? So it's just a matter of kind of figuring out when do we want that information to populate and how am I going to train my team members to keep on top of it? Are they filling out the information right on the intake form here? Are we then asking them questions on the field, critical questions? These are things that are going to determine what kind of task templates come on, maybe what values are added in here. If I don't put in my earnest money due days, it's going to default to 3, even though I know it's 5, because that's what it says on the contracts. I need to say 5 so that when my date template applies, that earnest money actually applies, and it says that now it's 5 business days after, or 5 calendar days after contract acceptance or the execution date, right? So there's certain questions here, and then after approval, there's still more fields that we need to make sure are updated, right? Because your job as a TC is going to be making sure that your fields are filled out, your documents are filed correctly, and you're reviewing your email templates. You're taking a look at them and going, do these look good? Is this populating correctly? Looks like we're missing earnest money amount. The FHA is showing up now, fantastic, but it looks like we're missing quite a number of merge fields. I want to make sure I put in my information to get those merge fields to populate. Let me go back to that original question. So again, my answer for you is really complex. I'm so sorry, Craig. Circling back to that, I would say that you're either going to want to have an intake form that you're going to build specifically for dual. You can clone it from your heavier side of things. If you go, well, usually when it's dual or when it's an intermediary transaction, I know on the seller side, right? Like where I'm representing the seller and a buyer comes in and they're unrepresented, or that's typically what it is, because I don't If it is the other way, you're representing the buyer, and the buyer goes, "I found this house," and you go, "Wonderful," and you look at it and you go, "Oh, they don't have a listing agent." Well, I'll offer my services to make it easier for them. Make sure that they understand everything that we need to do, keep them on track, help them out with things. So I'll offer my services to them, and they accept that. They go, "You know what? That would be great. Could you help us out with this? We're just trying to sell our house really quick," kind of thing. What I would recommend is either having it that you have either, again, you can have a dual intake form, that works. It's just about the information that we're sending and what emails are sending to who and how we're keeping track of that on the actual property itself. Because here, confirm all repair receipts have been received. And we look at this, this is built out for the seller, right? So do you want to build out seller? Do you have right now seller email templates and buyer email templates? Are you thinking about building out dual? Typically, I wouldn't have that because I don't want my buyers and my sellers to know each other, right? So I'd still have them separate, but I'd probably have two versions of this task. One that says confirm all repair receipts are received, sending that notification to the seller side, and then another trigger that says it's sending it to the buyer side, right? So that we can make sure that we're sending that communication to both sides. So usually a dual task template is required if you're going to have it out of one particular property. If you have it out of two, makes it a little bit easier. And then to answer your question, there is no way to clone two intake forms into one. Cloning intake forms are they're separate entities. When you clone it, it's going to be cloned into a separate entity, just to make sure I said that. I'm going to clear up the Q&A, see if there's any other follow-ups. Radio buttons. Yes, I can show you how to do radio buttons. So radio buttons are going to be in your fields, right? I'm going to go over to my 3-line icon, down into my gear icon, into fields. Once I'm in fields, anything that is a choice field can become a radio button. They can also become multiple select if you need it. So I'm going to go down to my inspection section. Here's my inspection details, and I can click on types of inspections. Once I've selected it, we're going to see our choices here. That's going to let you know that you can do radio buttons. And on this right-hand side, we're going to look for intake form radio display options. Here it is. I'm highlighting it on the screen, and I'll leave it on this screen. Right now, it'll most likely say no, and the stacked options will also say no. That's probably what it says in your account right now. When you change this to a yes, the option to update the stacked view will also show up. If you have more than two options, more than yes and no, more than 1 and 2, right? More than just these two top ones, you've got multiple. I always recommend stacking it. If we don't stack it, let me show you what it looks like. That way you don't have to stress out about it. I don't think, you know what, HOA frequency or dues? This could be radio buttons. Let's grab that one and do it because I already have this intake form open. Let me just update this so that I don't change it. HOA, frequency or due, payment or frequency. 3 options. I don't want the drop down anymore. I want radio buttons. I'm going to look for that radio button display option here. I'm going to say yes. I want it to be stacked because I have more than 3. You can do this for the ones that are only 2 options as well. If you like the look of it, we'll go ahead and say yes. We're going to scroll to the bottom and say, I understand, and update. When it closes those windows, you know that it's been updated. I always recommend having one of your intake forms open on the side that has those options already selected. We're just going to refresh the page and scroll down, and now we see that change reflected. If we do not like the stacked view, this is what stacked looks like, and you go, Hannah, I don't like that actually. I kind of want them side by side. If we change this to a no, we still have the radio buttons, but we say we don't want it to be stacked. Again, we're going to say, I understand, and update. And now when I refresh this intake form and we take a look at it, this is what it looks like. The reason I like the stacked view is because of this guy right here. The longer the answer is, the more weird it gets, right? The spacing for this is pretty limited. It does end up looping around and listing them down below, but the spacing for it is kind of funky. So I always recommend if you have more than just 2 answers that we go in here and we say that we want it to be stacked. Sometimes people liked the stacked view for their other buttons as well. I like to imagine intake forms being filled out side by side. I don't know if it updates it for you guys. Okay, good. It does update the view for it. I imagine they like to fill them out side by side with the contract. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe most agents aren't doing that, or most TCs aren't doing that. Maybe they have two screens and so they're both full screen. But me personally, when I'm filling out the intake form, I usually have it like this. And I find that the radio buttons are a lot faster to update. Now, obviously, you can select the wrong answer, so keep that in mind with this. But I like the radio buttons a lot because that drop down takes a second. It takes a second. Now, the only two fields that we cannot change into radio buttons are going to be your contract client type and it's going to be your contract status. Those are the two fields that cannot be altered. You can update the name of it, you can update the choices, but you cannot update the look of it. It will always be a drop down that you're going to select. Cool. Let me see. Can you remind me how to add a number of days as a field? Say the option period is 5 days. I want to be able to write 5 days and have that date. Yeah, absolutely. So we'll use HOA as the same example. So when we look at this, you've got a date field. It is that little calendar icon. If we select the name of it, you'll see date. Okay. That's going to be the field that's actually going to have that date. You can send out the invites to it, whatever you need to. Below that, I have it named HOA due dash days. When I select this field, this is a number field. So if I added in a new field, let's go ahead and say, trying to think of one that I don't have. Let's go ahead and say home protection plan. I mean, usually I call it home warranty, so I might need to edit this, but let's go ahead and say the home protection plan was due on a specific day. So, home protection plan due date. Okay, that's the first step. I'm going to grab and create that due date. In your case, if you already have the fields that say inspection period, I would probably just update the name to say option period, right? Instead of inspection period. You just select it and you do exactly what I'm doing right here, where you update the field label and the merge field, and then that creates that new field. So again, I'm going to add in that date field first. Under field type, I'm going to select date. And then I'm going to select add field, and that's going to add that up to the top. If I want this to be on the calendar, I'm going to select the calendar icon. If I want it to show up in the agent portal or the client portal, I'm going to click on that purple star. In this case, I'm not going to do that. This is just an internal date for us to track to make sure that we've got that home protection plan, that home warranty at the right time. Now, home warranty usually is due, I'm making this up, usually due 10 days after, but it can be written in to need it sooner. So how do I do that? I'm going to click on add field again. I already have home protection plan due date on my clipboard, so I'm just going to paste that in there. But I'm going to remove the date to keep up with consistency because I have that dash on every other one of my days fields. I'm going to put a dash and I'm going to say days. I'm going to grab that same field label and put it in my merge field. I'm going to go ahead and remove the excessive underscores. And then here for field type, I'm going to select number. Okay, we're telling the system that this can only be a digit. It cannot be words. I can't type in 4 spelled out. I have to put in a digit. I have to put in a number. So we're going to say a number field, and then we'll say add. And that's going to add on that number field here. Again, if we want to show it in the portal, we're going to select the purple star. We don't need to in this case. I'm going to go ahead and take my days field and put it below my due date. You might have it above. Some of them have it above. Some of them have it below. It's up to you on how you want to order it. But that's how I have it right now for this one. This is the first step to creating that so that you can get those dates automated. Once we've created the dates, the date field and the days field for all of the dates that we need, we're going to exit out of our field editor. We're going to go down into our templates. We're going to go to our date template. And if you have a date template, you can edit one that you already have. I'm going to go ahead and add in a new one. And I'm going to put date template and I'm going to pop in today's date. So we'll say 9/17, right? 2025 and say submit. And I'm going to add on those dates. So I'm going to select add. And this is going to show me all of the date fields that I have. So I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, well, I want to do one for, not for contract date or closing date. Those are hard-coded dates, right? They're written on the contract, so I don't need to do that. So I'm going to scroll down until I see earnest money due date. I want that one on there. Appraisal due date. I think I want appraisal due date. I think appraisal date is the actual date that the appraisal is happening, okay? So appraisal due date is the date that it's due by. Scrolling down, loan application due date, loan approval due date, inspection period due date, or option period in your case. Scrolling down HOA. Let's go ahead and grab septic and lead and then home protection plan. And I'm going to leave it at that because everything after this is about closing stuff and then listing dates below that. And now I have all these dates here. Let's go ahead and go through them one by one. So I'll start with earnest money at the bottom, or I could start with the top. I could click whatever one I want to. I'm just going to start at the bottom. And I'm going to say, okay, well, earnest money is typically 3 business days after contract date. Or do I want to go based off of execution date, right? There's 2 options there if you have 2 different dates. Most of you guys are going to have just acceptance date, which is typically the contract date. That's usually what I see as you guys having to fill out. Now, next I'm going to go to number field and I'm going to click on this drop down and I'm going to look for my earnest money due days field. The way that this is going to work, I'm going to go ahead and say update and you can see the rules down here at the bottom. You see 3 business days after contract date, and the rule below that says earnest money due days, business days after contract date. The way that the date template works is that if you put in the number 5 into this earnest money due days field, then it's going to go 5 business days after contract date is when the earnest money is due. If you don't put in 5 or you don't put in a number at all, then it's going to default to 3. Okay. For appraisal, let's say appraisal, we always put in a number. It's always negotiated. It could be 5, it could be 7, it could be 21, it could be 10. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to click on my number field and I'm going to look for appraisal due days. And I'm going to say, well, the appraisal due days, whatever that number is that we have to decide every single time. It's never a hard-coded number. It's never like a 10, it's never a 12. Here I'm going to say appraisal due date is calendar days after contract date again, and I'll say update. So you don't have to put in a number here if you have that days field, okay? I'm going to go to the one above that, loan application due date, and I'm going to say, well, the standard for this one is going to be 10 business days after the contract date, but sometimes it's extended. So I'm going to click on choose number field and I'm going to grab the loan application days and say update. For my next one, loan approval date, well, this is going to be 5 business days after the loan application due date, technically, right? It's not after the contract date. That loan application needs to be approved first, or a loan application due date needs to happen first, and then the loan approval date needs to be scheduled. So I'm going to say for date field option, I'm going to look for my loan application due date and say update. So when we look at our date templates, you don't have to say, oh, all of them are off of the contract date. Depending on where you're at, you could have them linked off of each other. When I get to my inspections, I'm going to go ahead and say for my inspection period, typically it's 15 calendar days after the contract date. Sometimes we put in a different number and I'm going to say update. And the septic inspection is due the same day as. So I'm going to click on same day as when the inspection due date is, or the inspection period date is. So what I'm saying here is that the moment that that inspection period date has a value in it, septic inspection is going to get scheduled too. And lead base, well, lead base happens a day after these 2 dates, right? So I could say this happens 2 business days after either the septic or the inspection period date. What I'm trying to do right now, or what I'm trying to show you guys, is that we can have dates built off of other dates. It doesn't just have to be off of the contract date. I want you to think of how your contracts work, how those dates are scheduled, and that's going to help influence how you're going to build these out. Above that, HOA, we're going to go ahead and do HOA is going to be based off of the number that we put in the days field. We'll say calendar days after accept or contract date and say update. And then home protection plan, once again, we're going to go and grab that home protection due days, plan due days, and say that is calendar days after contract date and say update. And now I have this date template. When we talk about your date templates, you want every single possible date that could be on that transaction here. I have inspections on here that may not be applicable, right? Lead-based paint isn't applicable to every single property. I have appraisal due date on here, loan application due date on here. Even if it's a cash deal and both of those have been waived, I still have it on here. You want every single possible date that you could possibly have added into your one date template, okay? The reason we say that is because if you don't and you have them split up, let's say I want it to either do this and I want it to do this. The system will have an issue. It will go, which rules are we listening to? Because the date temp here has loan approval date based off of calendar dates and the earnest money due off of calendar days. But this date template here says that the loan approval is going based off of business days and the earnest money is going off of business days. It argues with itself. It can only apply one date template to one property. If you go to your property, you can see that reflected. So we'll go over to the steeple side steeplechase. We'll click on this little drop down arrow. We'll go to our defaults and settings. I'm going to scroll down until we see our date template. We cannot select more than one. We can only select one date template, right? So you're only going to be able to apply one. You're going to want all of the possible dates in that one date template so that when you apply it, all of the possible dates that could be scheduled are there. Hannah, what happens if I don't have those dates there though? Like, will they still schedule? I don't want calendar invites to go out about inspections if inspections have been waived. I don't want information about loan application to go out if it's a cash deal. Totally fine. As long as you've built out your conditional logic right, right? And we've said, I'm going to go over to my transaction details, and we've said, um, so you can see it here. We said there's no HOA, right? I see critical details, earnest money, address, appraisal details, financing, inspection details, but I don't see anything for HOA. I don't have to worry about HOA docs or HOA dates being scheduled. I don't see anything for septic. So I don't have to worry about septic being scheduled. I don't see anything for lead-based paint. So I don't have to worry about lead-based paint being scheduled. But loan application's good. The inspection period has been scheduled. My earnest money has been scheduled now. And if I click on it, I can see that rule that it's with, this make it dynamic. This is working off of that rule. So I can change this and say, it's actually not 3, it's 7 for earnest money. And you can see that date immediately update. Right? It immediately updates to the 10th. So this is how we're kind of using that date template to go through and make sure that our dates are populated correctly. If you have it where there's a days field that's written in, you're going to want to make sure you have that days field within your fields. I always recommend bundling them together so that they're right next to each other so you can see them either above or below, whatever makes the most sense to you guys. But you're going to want to make sure that they're together so that you can see them. And then you're going to want to make sure you build out that date template. Now, I applied the date template manually in this case, right? I clicked on that drop down. I applied the date template manually. In most cases, you're going to go to your intake form. And I'm going to go ahead and edit this baby intake form. We're going to go to form triggers. I'm going to click on trigger options and I'm going to look for date template. Looks like I don't have one on here, right? I'm going to want to add on a date template for this. So I'm going to say when this is approved, I want to add or remove a template. And the template that I want to add is, and I can scroll down on this list or I can search for it if I can type in date template. I'm going to grab the one we just created today and say add, and then I'm going to turn on this trigger. I usually recommend grabbing the name of the trigger asset. That's just whatever it's going to apply, popping that into the details. And then we're going to sort the triggers. I always have my triggers in the right order. We want our fields to come on first with agent submitted, and then we want our templates usually to come on after approval. And that's how we build out that intake form. Well, with the date template at least. Now we can see it at the bottom. Now, with your date templates, here's the other caveat. You might go, well, if it's new construction, I have a very different date template because the times could be like way far out. Or if it's a cash deal, I have a different date template and it can be really, really short. That's where we're going to start to look at our conditions. We can have more than one trigger, right? With more than one date template on here. I'm going to go ahead and do this. We're going to pretend that this one, well, this is only applicable for my buyers under contract. So I'm going to say contract client type, and I'm going to say that this is only applicable to my buyers. And the one below that, I'm going to edit this and I'm going to say that this date template from 7:30, well, this one's built out for my sellers under contract. I'm just giving it's a bad example. Let's use the finance versus not. So we'll say that this one's for if it's a finance deal. So I'll say, is there a loan? If that's equal to yes, then I need my date template I just built out today. But my 7:30 date template, that's built out for a cash deal, and those are usually done in like 30 days. Let's say it's a much shorter time frame. So I'm going to go, is there a loan? And I'm going to say it's equal to no cash. So keep in mind that you can also add on those. Let me update my trigger asset so I know that these two are different. But you can also add on conditions to make sure that the correct date template applies at the correct time. Okay, that's what we're looking at for this. Cool. Let me just double check to see if there are any other questions before I jump on. Radio buttons is good. Date template is good. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so Craig, usually what happens, it's about 48 hours depending on when the video takes time to process and upload. We usually upload it into our YouTube page. So you can go to our YouTube page on Friday, I believe it should be, and see it there. If not, it will be added to our support center. If you'd like, I always recommend reaching out to our support on Friday. You can say, hey guys, I wanted a copy of Wednesday workshop. It was really helpful of this particular date, 9/17. Can you send that to me when it's ready? And then our support team will wait until that's been posted and then they can send it to you directly. That way you have a link to it every single time, whether that's the YouTube link or whether that's the article that we upload it to. That's what I'd recommend to make sure that you get there. Yeah. I mean, also, Craig, if you want to, I'm absolutely open to offering a call and we can take a look at them together with you. When it comes to your intake forms, I want you guys to think of it like this, okay? Your intake forms are what starts your transactions. You just need to think of, okay, what are the questions that I need to ask of either my agent or my TC so that I can get this transaction populated, right? When it comes to your task templates, I want you to think of those as, well, when they say yes, there's an inspection, these are the bite-sized tasks that I need. If they say yes, that there's an appraisal, these are the bite-sized tasks that I need. I have some people have it where they have bite-sized tasks on top of bite-sized tasks, right? So if they say that it's this and this, then they have another task template that brings on one individual task that reminds the client of X, Y, and Z, right? Or reminds the TC to do X, Y, and Z. I have clients that I'm working with right now, and they have it where if the house is more than 350, that they'll do extra stuff. They'll like make a marketing binder and they'll do stuff with like Infinity. It's like a tool that they use or whatever. They'll have some additional stuff that they do for free if the house is over that amount. But they can also opt out of it. They can, the buyers or the agent can also say, "Oh, I don't want the marketing binder," or they can opt out of the other kind of tools that they provide, the other services they provide. And so we have those task templates built out into these mini task templates. So that if they say that they want just the marketing binder, that task comes on to say, organize the marketing binder and get that ready. And if they say that they want this infinity loop service that they provide, that they'll do that as well. But if they say no to one or the other, those tasks don't come on, right? So it's not just about, oh, the house was more than this, so I'm going to put on all these tasks and then delete them if I don't need them. Instead, they ask that agent, what kind of services do you want us to provide to you, right? It's important. I know that it's a lot of work to set that up, but the idea is that if you can put in the time right now, in the future, you are saving your team so much more time. You're also saving them from a lot of human error, right? You don't want them to be in a scenario where they said that they didn't want the marketing binder and they didn't want this infinity loop. And now we have a marketing binder, right? That we created, that we used stuff to create, that's never going to be used. And we have these tasks about infinity or these tasks that we do for this tool that they don't even want to utilize, right? So it's important that we take our time to go through and make sure that we have the correct task templates apply, have the ones that you guys don't want applied. That way your team doesn't have to sit there and go, do I need this? I can't remember. Let me double check on my contract. I got to open this up. I got to take a look at this document and see what did they say for this. There's my document. Let me click on this. Oh, they do. Okay, so they do need this. Okay, let me go back over to my tasks. I'm going to keep this one, but I'm going to delete this one because they don't need that task, right? That's a lot of work. I'd rather it be that your TC goes, I know the tasks that are here, the tasks that I need to complete. I don't have to worry about anything else. Cool. No worries. Yeah, thanks for all the questions. Have a wonderful week. And again, reach out to support for that video. That's who I would ping. I'd chat with them and be like, hey guys, I need this, and then we'll see about them getting it over to you. Cool. I have a new calendar made for my email address. How do I move all my current dates to the new calendar so it doesn't clog up my main work calendar feed? Wonderful question. So the first step that you're going to do is go into each one of those properties that you have with that old calendar. You're going to go ahead. This is usually what I recommend. Since you're going to be going through your properties anyways, you should do this audit. I usually recommend going to my contacts first if I'm going to update the calendar and just making sure that all the contacts that need to be selected here have been selected, right? This is going to say like if I want Kylie on all of the calendar invites, I want to select this option for her here. If I want Jill or anyone else on this transaction, I would just double check that you have all the contacts connected. Next, I'm going to go over to this drop down arrow. I'm going to click on defaults and settings. I'm going to scroll down until I see my property date sync, and I'm going to click on this drop down. And this should show you all of the calendars that you currently have connected. If you look at this and you go, Hannah, that calendar I made, it's not there. Like it's like I don't see it. Then we need to go back and we need to resync your calendars. What does that look like? We're going to go back down to our gear icon into our global settings. We're going to go down to our calendar and we're going to say resync Google Calendars, and that should bring them in. You can delete whatever is not necessary. So like I can go through and I can delete some of these. I can delete a lot of these actually so that they're not showing up. Let's delete that one too. Let's delete that one and that one. Let's delete that one and that one. So I really only need these three here. And so now I only see the three calendars that I need. But resyncing the Google calendars will bring in all of those calendars again. It just refreshes the list. And again, you go back over to that next property, double check your contacts, make sure everyone's selected correctly, defaults and settings, scroll down to the bottom, property date sync. Now you can select the calendar that you want to sync it to. When you select sync, it does send out that invite right away or refreshes it so that you can get those calendar invites out. I don't know what happens if you delete a calendar that you have currently synced to your open to close account. So if you're like, well, a fast way that I can clean up my main work calendar is by deleting it out, go for it. I have no idea what's going to happen. I don't know if it's going to delete all of the calendar invites or if it will keep them and then send out new ones when you resync it to the new calendar. I haven't played around with it enough to be able to see what it would do. I don't know if it would remove them from the calendar. I've received some calendar invites from Tess, and even if they've deleted it, I haven't seen that deletion happen on my end as like a buyer or seller who's been added to it. So I don't know if it necessarily deletes the calendar invite if you delete that. Cool. I want to see if there was, I think that since I have you on here, was there any other questions that we weren't able to review? Oh, just the email signature for you, right? I really think it might be down to like the assigned to. Maybe that was part of the reason why it was showing up. But again, we might want to get that over to support. That was the one that was like, oh, I wasn't sure. Maybe we needed to get a ticket for it. But awesome. Alrighty, guys. I don't see any other questions. We're about 5 minutes to close. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to get them into the chat. If not, I will let you guys go. I'll go ahead and give it a couple more seconds. As always, I'll just go through my end of call, like kind of like spiel. If you guys are looking for, if you look at my open to close account and you go, Hannah, I do not have this new layout that you have. This is very fancy. How do I get that layout? What I recommend is reaching out to us in support. You're going to click on that chat icon, and then you're going to click on chat up at the top, and then you're going to send us a message, and you can say, hey, open to close. Can I see the new review? Can I see the new account? When we switch you over to it, you're going to see these new features. It's really just organization that ended up changing for this. And then we got a new feature that was added in this upcoming date. So I always recommend come over here, task pipelines, umbrellaed, trigger pipeline. Submission pipeline is where your intake forms will live. If you're switching from that old layout, which had the fire icon, to the new layout, this is where submission pipeline. These are going to be where all your intake forms are submitted at. Again, we have that new tool, upcoming dates. The other things with the new updates is going to be a reorg on the properties themselves. So you'll notice that the columns up here at the top have changed. I think that's really it. And maybe organization here has changed a little bit. The other thing you'll see is that you'll see that OTC Academy, right? This is our learning academy now that you guys can use to go through and learn what you need to learn about open to close. If you see anything that you're missing or you're like, where is this? Absolutely feel free to reach out to support. I always recommend that. Reach out to support if you guys can't find what you're looking for, or ask the AI. And what that does is that will actually help us go through and fill in the gaps for our support articles. This is super helpful for that. Other than that, I think the other things are going to be about like template automation or template AI automation, where let's say we've got an email template that we have to send out. We can use this AI tool to build out that email template for us. I just recently had a call with a client, and they were like, I have all my email templates, Hannah, but like I don't have them in open to close yet, but I have them like on a document. And I recommended that they come here and they say, can you update the email below with all of the merge fields? And then I had them paste in their email template. And guess what? Open to close, grabbed all the merge fields that they knew were applicable, added it into that particular email template. It was the coolest thing to see. So when we talk about, oh, I've got new email templates or I've got email templates that I got to get in, this is going to be so time consuming. You can use the AI email generator to bring in a majority of those merge fields, and then you can just edit what you need to edit afterwards. You look at it and you go, oh, you know what? I wanted to share not the email or the phone number. I wanted to share their business information. So I'm going to click on those merge fields. I'm going to go to escrow officer, and I'm going to grab the business email for them, and I'm going to swap this out for the escrow officer business email, right? So there's some automation with this AI tool to help you out with building out the content for your email templates. I recommend using that. It just brings in merge fields. It does not touch your smart blocks, okay? So keep that in mind too. If you're looking at this and you go, well, appraisal's not, why didn't it bring in smart blocks for this? We still have to build out the smart blocks for this, or put the smart blocks in if we need to put them in. But I just wanted to show you guys that because I thought it was really cool and it was a big time saver for this team. Templates, same exact thing. You can say edit and you can say AI task builder. You can put in a prompt. It'll build out that task template for you. And the same thing with our document templates. You can use that AI tool here to build out that list, that checklist of documents that you need. So this is really main stuff for like people who are new users, but existing users, if you're taking on a new state and you want to do a little bit of a revamp of your system, that might be a good solution for you guys. Awesome. Alrighty, well, I don't see any other questions, so I'll go ahead and let you guys go for today. I appreciate every single one of you for coming and asking the questions that you did. If you guys have any other questions, you're welcome to email support at help@opentoclose.com, or you can reach out through the chat as well when you log into your system. Again, it's going to be that chat icon, and then you're going to click on chat here, and then here you can send in a message. You can also see old messages that you had sent out to any of your other previous party members as well. But that's how you would be able to access our support. Other than that, I hope you guys take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful Wednesday. And I will see you all next week. Thanks for joining me.